Hey everyone, and welcome to part 1 of our 8-part tutorial series, IPv6 Troubleshooting for System Administrators and Technical Support. Look, if you're an experienced sysadmin or a tech support pro who already knows IPv4 like the back of your hand, but now you're tasked with helping your organization move over to IPv6, you are in the exact right place. We're going to bridge that gap together. Right off the bat, I want to give full credit to the incredible team who created this comprehensive series. This material was developed by Virtualization Options LLC. They are a really highly respected technology research, education, and advisory company based out of Colorado. They built this entire curriculum specifically for professionals like you who are out there diagnosing issues in both dual-stack and IPv6-only environments. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever found a technical concept to be just completely confusing? Right up until someone explained it just a little bit differently and then bam, it finally made sense? Well, that happens all the time for adult learners. IPv6 can be really complex, and we know our audience comes from a lot of different backgrounds and experience levels. That's exactly why, throughout this series, we're going to explain key ideas more than once and look at them from new angles. We're going to use a variety of real-world examples to make these lessons super relevant and easy to apply at work. Because honestly, seeing topics from different perspectives is what actually helps you understand and remember them. This way, you'll have a rock-solid foundation for the upcoming modules, making everything way easier to follow.
So here's our game plan for today's explainer. We'll start by unlearning some deeply ingrained IPv4 assumptions. Then, we'll look at the reality of dual-stack networks, tackle some real-world failure modes, highlight essential troubleshooting tools, and wrap up with some foundational takeaways. Let's get to it.
Step 1. Unlearning IPv4 assumptions. We need to completely reset your baseline.
Honestly, the absolute biggest mistake you can make right now is treating IPv6 like it's just a larger address space bolted onto IPv4. It isn't. It is a fundamentally different protocol. So before you can troubleshoot it effectively, you literally need to unlearn your IPv4 assumptions. If you apply your old troubleshooting instincts to an IPv6 network, you're going to misdiagnose the problem. You'll basically be chasing ghosts out there.
Let's look at a really stark contrast that trips up a ton of seasoned admins. The network interface. Now, in the IPv4 world, you look at an interface and you expect to see a single IP address, right? Something like 192.168.1.10. That is your baseline normal. But on an IPv6 interface, having multiple addresses on a single interface at the exact same time is completely normal. And this brilliantly illustrates what I mean. Notice the architecture on the IPv6 side here. You aren't just getting one IP. You will naturally see a link local address, usually starting with FE80, right alongside global unicast addresses, and even temporary privacy addresses, all coexisting. So if you run an IP config and see 4 IPv6 addresses on one adapter, do not try to fix it. That is the correct behavior.
We also have to break some serious muscle memory. First off, say goodbye to broadcast. It's gone. Multicast has replaced it entirely. That means your old tricks like pinging 255.255.255.255 to see what's alive on the subnet are completely meaningless now. Furthermore, NAT, network address translation, is largely a thing of the past. Because basically every device is potentially globally routable now, your entire firewall design and all your security assumptions have to change from the ground up.
Moving on to Chapter 2, the dual-stack reality. This is where we encounter silent failures.
Look, let's be real. Most production networks today don't run just one protocol. They run both at the same time. To understand the unique, silent failures that this dual-stack reality introduces, we really need to talk about RFC 8305, also known as happy eyeballs. Here's how it works. Modern browsers strongly prefer IPv6. When connecting, the browser initiates an IPv6 connection, but it sets a timer. After a tiny 250 millisecond delay, it races an IPv4 connection right alongside it. Whichever connects first wins.
But here's the really interesting consequence of this race. If you have a broken IPv6 path, you usually won't get a hard page cannot be displayed error. Instead, the connection silently falls back to IPv4. So to the user, it appears to be working, but every single connection is taking that 250 millisecond latency penalty. Users are going to complain about sluggish, slow page loads, totally masking a fundamentally broken IPv6 path that you still need to fix. This is exactly why you must test both stacks independently. That brings us to Chapter 3, Real-World Failure Modes. Let's look at what actually breaks and why.
Let's transition right into some tangible real-world IT scenarios. First up is duplicate address detection, or DAD.
When an interface comes up, it sends out a neighbor solicitation to make absolutely sure its new address is unique. But if another host responds, a conflict is detected. Now, the interface doesn't just crash or throw a massive error, it marks the address as tentative or flags it as DAD failed, resulting in zero global connectivity. You are going to see this a lot with cloned virtual machines, where duplicate MAC addresses end up generating duplicate IPv6 addresses. So if an interface is mysteriously stuck in offline, always check for that DAD failed flag. Let's move to and see how this builds into one of the most notoriously common misconfigurations out there, Path MTU discovery, or PMTUD failure. Listen closely, because in IPv6, routers do not fragment packets, period. Instead, if a source sends a big packet and hits a router with a smaller MTU limit, that router just drops the packet entirely. It then generates a critical ICMPv6 type 2 packet too big message and sends it back to the original sender. But what happens if an overly aggressive corporate firewall blocks that ICMPv6 packet? The sender never learns that it needs to send smaller packets, and the entire connection drops into a black hole.
And this specific PMTUD failure has a classic symptom that you will definitely hear on the help desk. A user will say, hey, I can ping the server just fine, but whenever I try to SSH into it, or load a heavy HTTPS page or copy a file, the session just hangs forever after the TCP handshake. Small packets succeed because they don't hit that fragmentation limit, but large packets fail entirely. When you see this, I guarantee you almost certainly have a PMTUD black hole caused by a misconfigured firewall.
Beyond PMTU, you really need to keep an eye out for a few other common scenarios. You might see VPN split tunnel leaks, where a client software prevents IPv6 tunneling, which completely exposes the real IP and bypasses your corporate security policies. Or watch out for VPN split DNS issues, where internal host names return completely different AAA records depending on which DNS server happens to answer first. And definitely watch out for rogue router advertisements. Docker bridge networks are famous for accidentally broadcasting bad routes to your local segment. Finally, remember, if router advertisements are blocked, or if a router sends an RA with a lifetime of 0, your hosts will silently lose their default gateway. There are no DHCP gateway renewals to save you in IPv6.
Okay, Chapter 4. Essential Troubleshooting Tools. Let's navigate this new stack. To really troubleshoot this stuff, you need to mentally bookmark this list of mandatory ICMPv6 types. Back in the IPv4 days, security teams loved to just blanket block all ICMP traffic. Block ping, block everything. If you do that in IPv6, you will literally break the entire network. ICMPv6 is mandatory. You absolutely must explicitly permit Type 1 for error signaling, Type 2 for that critical path MTU discovery we just talked about, Type 3 for trace routes, and Types 133 through 137. Those last ones, they handle neighbor discovery protocol, which is how hosts find routers and resolve addresses in the first place. Block these, and your network is dead in the water. Speaking of Neighbor Discovery Protocol, or NDP, remember earlier when we said you have to break old habits? Well, NDP entirely replaces ARP. So when you need to clear out stale address resolutions, you aren't clearing an ARP cache anymore, you're clearing the neighbor cache. On a Linux machine, you're going to use IP-6 nay flush dev eth0, and over on Windows, you'll be typing net shift interface IPv6 delete neighbors. You definitely want to commit these commands to memory. Wrapping up today with Chapter 5, Foundational Takeaways. Let's get you prepared for Module 2. All right, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. Let's synthesize these core lessons into a quick diagnostic checklist you can take back to your desk right now. First, to beat those silent, happy eyeball failures, always test both stacks independently using command line tools like curl-6 and curl-4. Second, never ever block ICMPv6 entirely. Ensure those mandatory types are permitted on every firewall. Third, remember that NDP replaces ARP. Fourth, stop trying to fix interfaces just because they have multiple IPv6 addresses. It's perfectly normal. Fifth, if small pings work but big files fail, fix the PMTUD black hole by permitting ICMPv6 Type 2 or use TCP/MS clamping as a quick workaround. And finally, please document your prefix delegation. ISP changes can silently break your static configurations if you aren't actively tracking them in your IPM system. Well, that gives us an incredibly solid foundation to build upon. But it does leave a pretty big lingering question from our scenarios earlier. If you have a Docker container or a cloned VM acting as a rogue router, how do you track down that specific device, silently breaking your network using just a single Wireshark filter? Well, in the next module of this tutorial series, we are going to dive deep into advanced packet analysis, and I'm going to show you exactly how filters like ICMv6 type equals 134 can completely save the day. You are not going to want to miss it. See you then.